Today, I'm going to give my race recap for the inaugural Outerbelt Trail Ultras. 15.35 miles, 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 4 seconds, and 920 feet of vert on what should have been a half marathon distance for the inaugural Outerbelt Trail Ultras half marathon. Yes, I did make the race a little bit longer than it was originally intended to be, but I think pretty much everyone was a little bit long because there was some getting lost involved. But before I get into that, I do want to go over some disclosures. I'm personally friends with the race director of this event, and he gave me a complimentary bib to come out there and run the race, but nobody's paying me to make this video or to attend the event, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before this video goes up on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about this race. I had such a great time running this event. I had no idea such fun trails existed. Just a 35-minute drive, at least with no traffic early in the morning on a Saturday, from my home to the trailhead down in the southwest suburb. So really excited to explore such a fun place. It wasn't the most technical trail that I've ever been on, and there wasn't a ton of vertical gain. Everything was pretty kind of like gradual, both in terms of ascents and descents, but kind of like the exact kind of trail that I love running on, something that I could still run the entire time, and something that I don't have to slow myself down because it's too treacherous on the descents because it's so steep, or because it's too technical or slippery or anything like that. I could just get out there and run. Such a fun time. But there's a couple of things to talk about with this race, and the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the fact that I got lost. I added, a good 2 miles to the event. I think that pretty much everyone added about 2 miles to the event. Some people had a little bit shorter than 2 miles added on. Some people had a little bit longer, but no one ran, I think, the exact course. And that's because we had some issues with some markings, but also we got let out, and I followed someone out in the beginning. That person missed like the first big turn, and I just started chasing that person, and everyone else was kind of after me. And so like basically everyone, and it wasn't a huge race. There was maybe, 20 to 30 of us going for the 5K, the 10K, and the half marathon that were all starting kind of at the same time, and at least had the same kind of like starting initial route. So like when one person went the wrong way, everybody went the wrong way. So there was a point where we should have made a hard right. Instead, the person in front went straight ahead and then picked up what was apparently another race's marking. So there was another company out there also doing a trail race on that day. They had a 3 mile and a 6 mile trail race that they were doing, and we started following those trail markings. And it got to a point where that person that went out ahead fast, I don't know if they were running the 5K, the 10K, or the half marathon, there was a person with no sleeves on, like a tank top, which was unusual because it was such a cold morning. But that person took off, and it was not very long after we like kind of got back into, we ran down a big road, kind of missed the main turn we were supposed to go, drove by like another trailhead, and then, dived back into the woods. Right after we got back into the woods, I kind of lost that guy right away. And so then I was kind of like running by myself and not really sure where to go. I saw a guy carrying signs and some marking flags, and I was like, hey, does the race go this way? And he's like, what race are you talking about? I'm like, half marathon. And he's like, I'm not with that race. I don't know which way you're supposed to be going. And I was like, okay. So I just kind of followed the little flags that were already on the ground that had already been planted. Didn't realize that those were not our flags that we were supposed to be following. So after a while of doing that, I was looking at my watch, and I thought, you know what? Sometimes when I use the mapping feature on the route on my watch, sometimes if I don't set it up correctly where it's like I didn't start exactly where like the GPX file had started, it might say, hey, go back and start and kind of like stand in the exact spot. So I thought, well, maybe it was off a little bit and eventually it'll kind of like fix itself and pick up in the middle of the route. It never did after a while. And so like once it had been like a mile since like I thought that the watch was on the right course and I couldn't see anybody anymore, I kind of just stopped and I was like, I think I've gone the wrong way. I'm going to double back. So I started doubling back, and pretty soon some of the people behind me were there, and they were like, I don't think we're going the right way. And I'm like, yeah, we're not going the right way. So we kind of, everyone stopped. We all huddled up, and people who had phones got their phones out. We figured out that we had definitely missed a turn and we had to go back. We had decided to like go back and like find like the point where we missed the turn and resume the course from there, even if it meant that it would end up adding quite a bit of distance to our overall run for the day. So we ended up doing that. And by then I had reset like my mapping. So one of the nice things that I can do is I could stop kind of the route navigation in the middle of my activity and restart the route navigation. I was able to do that and it picked it up fine. And at that point, things were pretty smooth sailing in terms of the turns. I got all of the notifications that I needed and I was able to make all the turns. And some of those I definitely would have missed. And on some of those where there were markings, I just didn't see them. I don't know if it's because I'm a little bit colorblind. I just don't see markings like that very well. But if it wasn't for the watch, there's no way that I would have made it through this course. I would have had to kind of like fall back a little bit and run with other people in order to be able to run the course, because there's just no way I would have been able to make it. It ended up that I kind of did run with other people for the day anyway, because one of the things that the race director had us do was to kind of take like a trail runner's oath before we started the race, which I thought was kind of fun.
Everybody raise your hand. I promise to push myself.
I promise to push myself.
I promise to protect my fellow runners.
I promise to protect my fellow runners.
And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, I don't know how I got into the front of this pack here. I don't know if I'm in the lead of this race. I don't know where that guy without the sleeves, I don't know where he's gone. He took off and we hadn't seen him. We saw him at one other point going the other way, and we were trying to like flag him to join us, but he was gone. And so we didn't know where that person was. And so I think I was like in the front. And I was just kind of like, well, I wanted to get a workout out of it today, and I think I'm going the right way, so I'll just go. And then I was realizing that I wasn't dropping people, but like I was putting a little bit of a gap between me and some of the people behind me. And I was like, when I got to some of the turns, which were really hard to kind of figure out that, oh, we were supposed to make the turn here, because it looked like the main trail went one way and you were supposed to take the offshoot the other way, that kind of thing. I was like, I should probably wait and make sure those people are getting the turns too. I think some of them, did have phones, but I was just like, it's going to be a real long day if like at every big turn, like you end up adding like a mile or 2 miles. So I was like, I think I know where I'm going. At least I'm going to follow the dot on my watch and go that way. And so we kind of stuck together that way. There's also a lot of mountain bikers. It was beautiful weather, and the trails, the single tracks that are out there, really great for mountain biking as well. So that also caused a little bit of kind of like starting and stopping. Other than that, like once we kind of got like that first kind of like batch of wrong turns out of the way, it was relatively smooth sailing the rest of the way. So I missed only one other turn. And when I missed that, the watch told me, and I started turning around, and then there was a runner behind me, the one that I'd kind of been waiting for. She had like earbuds in, and then when I stopped, she's like, what's going on? I'm like, well, I think we got about 5K left, but I missed the turn. But I think after that, it should be pretty smooth sailing. And she's like, wait. And she had like pulled her phone out of she had like an arm sleeve thing. She pulled the phone out and she's like, we're at 13 miles already. And I was like, I know. We got a little bit of a ways to go, but it's only 5K. So we'll be there pretty soon. And so she was like, this is going to be the longest run I've ever run. So I was like, oh, okay. She was doing great. But yeah, I was surprised that this was her longest run. But we ended up then getting back to the trail. And it was one of those weird things where like, it didn't even look like there was another way to go. So I didn't even know where we could have possibly missed the turn. But as I got closer to it, my watch like beep, 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 and let me know like, hey, you got to go down this way. That doesn't really look like a trail. But then once I got into it a little bit, it looked like a trail. So then we were able to kind of like find our way the rest of the way. Along the route, we would pick up like additional people that were like, I think we're going the right way. And I was like, you're on the half marathon? They're like, yeah. I'm like, hop on, we're all going. And so like, I'm hoping that everyone kind of like strung out long enough so that way everyone kind of had someone that they could follow, or if it got too spread out, people had phones and stuff like that. So I'm hoping everyone made it safely. I know like the group of me and 2 other runners that I was kind of spent most of my time with during the day, they made it fine. And then one of the new people that we had found, I saw him finish, and then another woman had finished shortly, right around that same time as like the 4th person to finish. So I at least know of like 5 people made it through the course and were able to finish fine. So I think that might have been the bulk of the half marathon runners for the day. So we definitely got lost, but once I was able to get on the course and figured out, I only had a couple of spots where I didn't really know where I needed to go. But it was something where I was checking my watch kind of like all the time. And it shows in the video footage too. Like I'm like just looking at my watch even while I'm trying to film and like navigate the terrain. So it was a little bit harder that way. But you know, the last trail, my only other trail race that I ran, you know, they had course markings every quarter mile, and I still missed a turn and ended up inadvertently cutting the course by a decent amount. So like, you know, I'm going to blow it at some point on a trail race, and you know, that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. I was out there to have fun and explore some Chicago trails, and that's exactly what I was able to do. And I did mention in the live stream last week that I was like, a half marathon is a little bit short. I don't want to run the full trail marathon. I wish there was something kind of like in between those 2 distances. And at 15.35 miles, I pretty much ended up running like a metric marathon. So like, I got exactly the workout that I was hoping for. I didn't quite get the exact like pace and intensity that not pace, but like the intensity I was looking for. But you know, I just wanted to make sure that at least some of the people that were behind me were able to, you know, have someone to kind of chase, or at least see and get some confirmation that they're going the right way, or at least going the same way as another person. So like, it was just a lot of fun, and I was happy to run that way, and just overall had a really good time. All right. Now that I've talked about the whole getting lost situation in terms of the course, let's talk about some of the other stuff in terms of the race. As far as kit, let's talk about kit. We'll go from kind of like top to bottom. Hat I was wearing, the Path Projects hat. I think that's the John Muir hat. That one worked out really well for me. It was a little bit chilly on the day. And running through the woods, there's, you know, leaves are starting to fall. It's autumn, but, you know, there's still a lot of sun poking through, but there's also still a lot of kind of like darker areas in the trail. So like, it's not a day I really would have wanted to wear sunglasses or deal with kind of like the on off. So having the hat was fine for me. The top, I wore the Everdict Trail short sleeve, like the zip up shirt. And that was perfect for me. I was a little bit cold in the morning in the beginning. Temperatures were around 40 degrees at the start, at least in the woods. And so I was a little bit cold to start off, but I had that shirt, the Everdict shirt, and the Kalenji thin running gloves. And, you know, that was enough to keep me warm for the first couple of miles. And then by like mile 4 or 5, I really didn't notice the cold at all. And it just felt like a great shirt to have on. So really comfortable, you know, didn't even really notice it at all, and just felt like a great shirt to run in. Highly recommend it. I didn't run with the pack, so like, you know, the grippy things that are on the shoulder, all those other features I didn't really need, but you know, they also weren't an encumbrance or anything that became annoying even when I wasn't wearing a pack. So I really like racing in that shirt. For the pants, I was going to run in the Everdict trail shorts, the kind of the 2-in-1s, and I thought that one would be nice because then it has like a longer, almost like kind of like a bike shorts kind of underneath, and then a shell on top, like shorts for the shell, and then a brief for the liner, so kind of like a triple layer. And I thought on a cooler day that might be nice, but I decided that I wasn't going to rely on the aid stations for this race, even for hydration. So I brought a flip belt and the flip belt water bottle, which carries a little bit less than 12 ounces of fluid. I thought hopefully with a cooler day that'd be enough. And so I wore that, and I didn't want to put my gels in the flip belt because I don't like putting gels in the flip belt. And I didn't want to put gels in a pair of pants that has all the pockets around the waistband because my flip belt would have been on there. So it would have been a lot of like pressure pushing on things. So I wore the Rabbit half tights, which ended up being perfect because these pants, the pocket starts a little bit lower. So here's the waist, and here's where like your flip belt would go. And then the the flip belt is not going to interfere at all with getting in and out of the pockets for your gels. So like the flip belt's not going to sit on top of your gels. It's not going to like smush your gels. It gives just the right amount of space. So these pockets, the distance from the waistband is very, very well thought out. I didn't even realize that until I was trying to think of a way to best carry a flip belt, hydration bottle, and gels at the same time. And those ended up being perfect. They're a little bit on the thick side, but like most, half tights are, but it ended up being perfect for the temperatures that are out there. My legs were never cold at any point. So like I felt like those were absolutely perfect for me. And then for the shoes, I picked the Hoka Zinal. This is a ProFly midsole trail shoe from Hoka. It's meant for shorter trail races or speedier runs. And it was absolutely perfect for the terrain out there today. There was a couple of like muddy spots, but nothing too slippery. Everything was pretty dry. And I think a lot of the times most people are out there either hiking or on mountain bikes. That's what it looked like for me in terms of the way the single tracks were kind of like worn in. So everything that I was running on was pretty packed down if I was running on dirt. Other times I was running directly on like limestone. So like the surfaces that I was running on were softer surfaces, but were still pretty firm. And the footing was very sure. So like I didn't have to worry about having big lugs or anything. So the Zinal ended up being, I think, the perfect choice for about 2 hours and change out there on the trails for the day. So very happy to have those. All right, that was all the kit. Let's talk about the nutrition and how I kind of approached that. I had a feeling that, this wasn't going to be like an hour and 30, hour and 45 minutes in terms of how long this half marathon would take, because I was going to be out in the trails. There's going to be some, not a ton of vertical gain, but a little bit of some rolling hills. And so I planned on bringing 4 gels, and that's what I did, plus also like the 11 to 12 ounces of hydration fluid. And normally for a half marathon, I wouldn't bring any fluids myself. I'd rely on the course, and I'd bring 2 gels. But this time I brought 4, and I'm glad I did. So what I ended up bringing was 2 Martin calves, 1 regular Martin, and then 1 Huma Chia Plus, just in case. I didn't think I would really need the salts or the electrolytes in it, but just in case I didn't feel like eating the Martins, I would have something else that tasted a little bit more like kind of food to have in the Huma Chia Plus gel. I ended up taking both of the Martin calves and then the regular Martin. I didn't take the Huma Chia at all. And all the gels went down really well. I took the first one at like 40 minutes, and then at like an hour 10, and then at like an hour 30 or an hour 40. I think maybe an hour 40. So like 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes between gels. And that ended up being fine. Plus I also drank, I think maybe 8 ounces of my fluid, and I had honey stinger. I think there's only one flavor for their during activity drink mixes. It has a little bit of caffeine in it, a little bit of sugars, a little bit of electrolytes, so I took that as well. And that had me nicely topped up for the day. I didn't feel like I was hungry or thirsty, so I felt really good about kind of like what I had picked for the day. And the nutrition worked out really well, and I felt like I had kind of like, I felt like steady kind of like energy level throughout the entire race. So I feel like I executed that really well, given kind of the temperature and the terrain and kind of a lot of the starting and stopping that I'd been doing. So in terms of like the workout that I, ended up getting, my goal was to have kind of like, 10 to 13 miles of kind of marathon effort. I knew the paces wouldn't be very like consistent given like the rolling nature of the course. But I was hoping for power level somewhere around like 265 for the most part. And, like the power numbers fluctuate all over the place, because as I was going uphill, they would spike, going downhill, they would dip. And then there was a lot of kind of pace changes because of either the mountain bikes or waiting for people to make sure that they were making their turns, and just, all the other kind of like stuff that was happening on the day, making sure I was going the right way and navigating switchbacks and all that kind of thing. But I think overall, I felt like I got like, about 15 miles of a moderate effort on the day, a little bit more than moderate, maybe not 15 marathon miles in terms of that kind of sustained effort. Today on Sunday, I was definitely feeling a little bit sore. I went out for a bit of a recovery run, and it took me a good, 3 or 4 miles before I really felt like I was starting to loosen up. So I got a pretty good workout in yesterday, and that was the whole goal. And like the other objective or the main objective for the day was to kind of go out there, support my friend, and learn more about some of the trails that are available in the Chicago area. So I'm really excited to exploring more of that. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about today, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, feel free to stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. And I'd love to be able to talk to you guys in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?